What's up, y'all? State of Disrepair, welcome back. This one's gonna be a little bit quicker because I already have all my audio pre recorded and I'm just gonna kind of take y'all through it. This is really just gonna be a demonstration of how I go about processing and mixing vocals. So, before we get into anything else, I'm just gonna start by sharing with y'all my kind of philosophy when it comes to mixing vocals specifically. The first thing, and probably the most important thing I would argue, is that a good vocal mix starts at the mic. So, what I mean by that is you really want your vocal performance to be on lock. You want your technique to be as good as you can get it. You want your pitch to ideally be as close as you can get it. Although, with pitch correction technology nowadays, that's less of an issue. But still, you want your overall technique to be as solid as you can make it, right? Just like digestion starts when you're chewing your food, a good vocal mix starts at the mic. So, get your technique down first. Second is kind of like my personal approach to mixing when all the audio is recorded and then the computer, right? I typically try to preserve as much of the raw performance as I can. Basically, my approach is less is more. And that's because of a few things. The first thing being some of my favorite records are kind of processed that way. I'm talking like, like Korn's self-titled album is a very good example of that where the recording is very raw, it's very chaotic almost, in the vocal performance, in the production, the instruments, everything, right? That's just kind of my taste. Second of all, it really just comes down to the genre that I typically work in. I typically work in metal, kind of hardcore, the more intense sounds, which, in my opinion, benefit more from a more raw kind of processing. If you're working in pop or, another kind of genre that might demand more polished production, then of course you can definitely do that. Really, it just depends on the genre that you're working in. It depends on what the individual song needs. I'll process different songs slightly differently depending on how I arrange them, how I record everything, and a little bit more on pitch correction. I really only use it when it's necessary. For this song specifically that I'm going to be processing, I didn't really sing. I'm more just kind of like talking and screaming. So the pitch is really secondary. So you're not going to see any pitch correction on this song specifically. If I am doing a song where I am singing cleanly, then I will typically put on at least a little bit of pitch correction just to kind of take care of anything egregious. Without further ado, let's jump into the computer. So here's all the vocal parts, right? You can see I've got them divided into the verse vocals in purple and the screamed vocals for the chorus in this bluish color. And the main reason I have them separated out like this is mainly just because I used different techniques in the verse and in the chorus, Like in the verse, I'm pretty much just talking and even whispering as we get into this kind of bridge section here. But in the chorus, I'm doing a full scream, right? So that demands different kinds of processing because the sound quality is different. It's louder, there's different things happening. Let's start with the verse. Let's just start on this first line here. First of all, here's how it sounds with all the effects on it.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets.
So this is what I mean by performance, right? I am talking, but I'm kind of talking like this, I have a little bit more grit, a little bit more compression to everything, right? And that's what I mean by getting the performance down. I wanted that sound quality to be there so that I can then go and process the raw audio. Speaking of processing the raw audio, here's the effects chain. So first things first, I have a utility down here that's turned down a little bit, and really that's just to kind of give us some headroom for me to kind of mix up as I process things, right? It's easier to make things louder than it is to make things quieter, I've found. Next up is a compressor. It's a very light compressor. As I play the audio, you might be able to see that it's not really working that hard. It's really just kind of trying to even out all of those peaks and valleys that kind of stick out the most. And as we get further along in the verse, as my voice gets more intense, you're probably going to be able to see it working a little bit harder. But really, like I said, less is more for the compression. I'm just trying to kind of take care of everything that sticks out too much. Next up, I have an EQ. And this is very basic. It's just a high pass filter just to kind of leave space for the low end, leave space for the bass and kick and stuff like that. Although you'll notice this isn't a hard cutoff. I didn't want to thin out the vocals too much. I really just kind of wanted to just round it out a little bit. And I am allowing some of these lower frequencies to come through just so that it has more beef. And here, as I play the audio, you'll be able to see that.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets.
Right, so everything kind of under the curve is coming through, and that's just to add a little bit of oomph to it. But everything below here we don't really need, honestly. All right, next up, I have Nectar 3 by iZotope, and really, I mainly just use it for the de-esser up here. What the de-esser is going to do is it's going to provide some extra compression on sibilants, so that are, any high frequency noises in vocal parts, that's S sounds, T sounds, F sounds, anything that has like a hiss. You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that really tends to poke through the most in the vocal mix. So the de-esser really is just gonna put some compression on that and keep those under control. And here's how that looks.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets.
And the cool thing about Nectar's iZotope is that you can hit this listen button and you can hear just the sibilants that are being compressed. So let's give that a listen real quick. Right? So you hear the S's, you hear the T's, I think you hear the initial J in the word jack, and that's just gonna kind of keep all of those high frequency sounds under control. And next up is probably my favorite vocal plugin that I have. This is Vocal Menace by Chris Lipe. If you don't know who Chris Lipe is, he's got a great channel on YouTube. Talks about everything voice related. He personally taught me everything I know. And now he has a vocal plugin. It's a great plugin. It's free last I checked, and it's awesome. It just makes the voice sound super powerful. Personally, for the type of stuff that I do and the type of vocal techniques that I employ, this is a great kind of one-stop shop plugin to get it sounding pretty nice. And this isn't sponsored, by the way. This is just something that I like to use. And actually, if I take it off, you can hear what exactly it's doing.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets.
So it really is doing a lot, as you could probably hear. It's adding some compression up here and some saturation. It's putting on that bandpass filter.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass.
Right, that's this cup setting down here. It makes it sound like it's kind of coming through a phone. This plugin really does a lot, which I think is part of the reason that I love it and why it's such a mainstay in my vocal processing chain. Plus, it just sounds cool.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets.
And down here at the very end, there's the utility. That's just our final volume control, right? That just kind of places the vocals in its final place in the mix. And really, that's kind of the extent of the vocal chain that I usually use. Sometimes I'll put in like a multi-band compression, like in between Vocal Menace and utility, really just to kind of do any final touch-ups on individual frequencies. But anyways, that's it for the verse, really. And the chorus really looks very similar, you know what I mean? There's no sibilants in the chorus, there's no S's, T's, or F's or anything like that, so really I just kind of was able to leave out the de-esser. But you can see that all the other plugins are the same, utility, compressor, EQ, all that good stuff, right? Here's how the chorus sounds.
I'm gonna make you bleed!
Right, like I said, that's that full scream, right? And if we go into Vocal Menace, you can see that I'm treating it differently, right? There's no cup, so we're not doing the kind of phone effect. And I have a little bit more reverb and delay on here just to kind of make it sound a little bit more spacey, a little bit bigger. Also, less drive. I put less saturation on it because when I'm screaming already, I'm putting a lot of compression and saturation on the voice itself just through the technique. So I find that I kind of need less of that grit when I'm working with a full scream. And you'll also find that these screams are layered. I've got 3 different performances here. The first one just being a track on top, just straight down the middle, right?
I'm gonna make you bleed!
And then I've got 2 others, the left and right ones, which are panned left and right. Now, those are going to add a little bit more space, right? It's going to make the overall scream sound wider. And I've found that in layering screams, it kind of helps smooth it out in a way. So let's listen to all these individual performances on the word bleed real quick. Here's the center one.
Bleed!
Here's the one that's panned a little bit to the left.
Bleed!
And then the one that's panned a little bit to the right, down on the bottom here.
Bleed!
You'll hear that they're all slightly different. They all have their own unique kind of qualities, but if I play them all together,
bleed!
They serve to kind of bolster each other and kind of smooth each other out, so it does sound like a much more full, rich sound. And that is further emphasized by panning these 2 slightly to the left and to the right. That's going to add more width. You'll notice that I didn't pan them hard left and hard right, because if I were to do that and play all of these performances on top of each other,
bleed!
They sound a little bit kind of disconnected in a way. So I kind of compromised my desire for space and my desire for cohesiveness by just kind of panning each of these halfway in either direction.
Blade!
More cohesive, still wide. Anyways, so that's kind of how I treated the chorus there. And these performances are kind of largely the same, except actually at the very end of the chorus, it does sound a little bit different, right?
I'm gonna make you bleed!
And that's because I recorded the center part slightly differently. If I solo it out and play it, you'll hear what I mean.
I'm gonna make you bleed!
Definitely very high. The distortion in my voice is kind of placed a little bit higher up, you know what I mean? And speaking of panning, you'll notice that this verse performance right here,
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets.
it's just one track just right down the center. And that's just going to kind of serve to open up the song and really start us off in a place where we can just build the energy as it goes on. And you'll notice in the second verse, right, these sections are layered up.
Worship no one but yourself and your stinking fermented soul.
And once again, I'm going for that kind of width, right? So I have both of these panned a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. Notably, I didn't include the center track on top. I didn't want the energy of this verse to kind of compete with the chorus down here. You know what I mean? Which brings us over to this bridge section right here.
You talk, but your words mean nothing. You talk, but your words mean nothing.
Right, so I'm just kind of repeating that line over and over again, just kind of starting at a whisper and building up the energy, especially as I get to here.
You talk, but your words mean nothing.
Oh yeah, I also included this track down here.
You talk, but your words mean nothing.
Just kind of a little bit of an extra layer there that I thought would be fun to add. And that brings us into this final iteration of that line.
You talk, but your words mean nothing.
More screamy stuff. I love it. Anyways, brings us into the final chorus.
I'm gonna make you bleed.
For this final chorus here, I'm kind of lingering in that high kind of register for this scream right here that's kind of constant throughout. And I think I reflected that in these two sections here, did I?
I'm gonna make you bleed.
I did. I sure did. Oh yeah, and I also did that also up here, just, you know, an extra layer. An extra layer of emphasis. So here's all of it together.
I'm gonna make you bleed.
And that is how we kind of finish off the song, right? We kind of repeat that line, I'm gonna make you bleed, like it's a regular chorus. And that's kind of how the vocals go, really. So I think to round off this video, what I'm gonna do is just play this first verse and the first chorus in context with the rest of the instruments, just so you can kind of see how everything fits into the mix so far. And yeah, here it is.
Blackjack boots crushing shards of glass of all the bottles that line the streets. You're too high and mighty to look down on the peons beneath your feet. Try to compare yourself to a god, but your flesh is all I see. Your golden statues will melt in the sun, and when your coronation day is done, I'm gonna make you bleed. I'm gonna make you bleed. I'm gonna make you bleed.
So that was just a quick overview of how I process vocals. Really, just nothing too fancy, no crazy expensive plugins, no fancy equipment required. I'm just kind of working with what I got. And generally, I'm pretty happy with the result. I'm liking how things are sounding. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. I hope y'all enjoyed this one. I hope y'all got something out of it. If you like what you saw here, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And y'all take care of yourselves. I'll see you around.